Well, it was supposed to be coffee, and I agree with the professor. And unfortunately, both of us live by coffee, intravenously, I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
3 cups a day minimum.
Yeah, well, it's almost wine time, so...
That's okay, too.
I would like to introduce Christine Bowen, who is the COO of Running USA. And welcome, Christine. And can you maybe tell us something about how USA or Running USA came about and what it is?
Absolutely. And before I do that, I wanted to also say thank you to Alessio and to Chris for having me back. It's been a pleasure over the years to watch the program evolve at this event, and it's always nice to be here with our folks from around the world. So I've been at Running USA for 12 years now, and it's evolved tremendously since I've been there. I started really just working on our conference, which at that point was about a 250-person event, and prior to the pandemic, increased to almost 800 attendees from 17 countries around the world. As an organization, we were formed originally to really, alongside USA Track and Field, to embrace the sport of distance running and help get elite athletes to the podium. Fast forward 12 years later, and today we're really a business-to-business organization. We are the trade association for the sport, comprised of members, non-members. I would say 60% of our membership and our following are events from around the country and around the world. Events ranging from Chicago event management to Grandma's Marathon to local 5Ks in the industry. Our role in the industry really is to bring all players from a business perspective together. So if you have a race, I want to bring you into Running USA to teach you best practices and also connect you with all of the vendors and service providers that you would need to put on that event.
And I read that you did some surveys, and in fact, since 2007, I think you've been doing surveys of the runners. Now, that to me excites me because, you know, first of all, I'm a runner, and secondly, because that's our clients. You know, everyone here has a client, whether it's federation or commerce, and the client is the runner. And I don't think we've listened enough necessarily to what the runner wants and what they're going to want. So can you perhaps talk to us about the changes you've seen in the surveys from 2007 to, say, 2020, before the big upheaval?
100%. We used to be fortunate enough where we had a part-time researcher on staff with us, and we could do very in-depth, detailed reports, such as half marathon studies, marathon studies. With the changes in privacy policies and data sharing, it's a little bit more challenging for us to get to that granular level of finisher information. So now we have a study called the Global Runner Study. The Global Runner Study is a study that we go out into market through our membership, through our social media channels, and we ask consumer runners questions about their behaviors alongside of running. What's really interesting about the study that we just launched a couple of months ago, the 2022, was, and I would say in all surveys in general, when people take those surveys, they say one thing and sometimes they do another. So, you know, if you look at the 2022 survey, for example, it says that 66% of participants said that they were going to increase their participation going forward post-pandemic. And I think most event organizers in the audience would agree that probably hasn't held true. And so now we're sitting here scratching our heads going, okay, we have this wonderful data, but if people aren't behaving true to that, how do we make decisions about our events? And it, you know, comes back to us to keep reevaluating those questions and really asking ourselves as event organizers, what are we doing to meet the changing needs of those runners and consumers in general?
Yeah, I don't think we do that enough. You know, some examples, Tom Williams earlier on was saying that his drop-off is in lady runners, staying at home, taking the kids to football rather than going to park run. What are you finding?
We're finding the opposite in as
Us
far
too.
as our surveys and our data. We know, at least in the US, which is the majority of the survey data that we collected this past year, and I should say North America, we use our friends in Canada as well to deploy that survey, that women runners, from what we see, are more apt to do runcations with their girlfriends. They are definitely more interested in that sort of environment. We also saw in the study, which ties into that, that runners are absolutely willing to travel 100 to 300 to 500 mile distances if it's meaningful, if it's an experience on a long weekend for them to participate in an event.
And that again goes against some of the information we've got on sport and travel. So the potential is definitely there.
I agree, and I feel like there's been a lot that I've sat here this weekend and listened to the different conversations and thought, gosh, in a lot of ways, a lot of this data does contradict itself. And so, and so it's important that we still keep doing it, but, you have to take it all a little bit with a grain of salt, I believe, and, use it to make the best decisions, especially when you're talking about events that are regional and international. What I find in New York City is going to be tremendously different than what we find in Nebraska or in Jacksonville, Florida, or in San Diego, California, for what people are coming to for those events.
What were the trends before the pandemic and building up to the pandemic? How was the industry doing then?
We were great. Like I mentioned, we, definitely not a running boom, but maintaining and very, slow and steady and consistent growth. We found that across our events, and we also found that just across our vendors and suppliers and folks, we're very comfortable. And I think when, we were in Las Vegas for our largest conference ever, just weeks before the pandemic hit. And it was very positive, it was very upbeat, and then immediately, my job turned to being part-time therapist for the industry, where my phone would ring, and every week it was a different conversation. Running USA as an organization was asked to, come to, be lobbyists for the industry, and it's incredibly challenging when you are asked to do that because you want to help everyone, but everyone's regional and local governments had different requirements at that time. So the best we could do was really continue to provide best practices, encourage people to collaborate with one another, and lean into the virtual aspect of things, and just continue to evolve from that perspective.
I think you're absolutely spot on. Every region was different, and hats off to Chris. And in fact, that's probably how Chris and World Athletics got together. And that global council has come from that, sharing and working forward. What did you see towards the end of the pandemic? Because you did a survey that came out basically focusing on the pandemic.
We did. Part of our whole Global Runner study is built upon live events happening in person. And, but we didn't want to take a year off. We felt it was really important to look at the data and how consumers were digesting and responding to the world of virtual. Obviously every week, day, month that went by, we were hoping things would go back to normal, as they say. And when we look at that study and that data, they were okay with having the virtual component. They were okay to have something, but they were so eager to get back to in-person events. When you moved to the 2022 survey data, it was very evident that some people were still wanting to do that or wanted it as a supplement. A lot of events held on to that and are still having virtual components because it gives them an opportunity to engage in a different way. For me personally, there's nothing that replaces going into and standing in a start corral and going out. But I think it also created, and we heard this a lot, opportunities for people who couldn't be together for travel reasons to feel like they were connected and running together one way, shape, or form through those virtual events.
Yeah. Virtual events, of course, in China were long before the pandemic, and were massive. I mean, you get 30,000, 300,000 people participating in a virtual event long before the pandemic, in Xiamen, for instance. So there is definitely an opportunity there going forward in some regions. you know. I actually think the pandemic was good. That's probably quite controversial, but just from the point of view, we wouldn't be having this live broadcast on YouTube. We wouldn't be having all the collaborations worldwide if it hadn't been. And we've been forced, as Tom Williams says, to ask the question, what else is wrong? You know, what else is incorrect, which is great. You've tweaked your survey, though, over the last couple of years to be more inclusive. Can you speak to that?
We have. We realized in the United States that there is a strong desire to, well, when you look, let me back that up. When you look at our survey data, the respondents were predominantly white. And so 2 years ago, we added into our survey questions that were very specific around diversity, whether it's color of skin, LGBTQ+, athletes with disabilities. We really feel like our events in the United States and just worldwide should be looking at that a little bit more seriously as far as how are you approaching those in your event marketing, in your materials. And it was a little profound because we did actually get, first we looked at the numbers, and when they came back, because we were getting those survey results from our events, which are predominantly white, the results showed that. So it really pushed us as an organization to make a more concerted effort to, educate our events, and our programming at our annual conference has really embraced that. And it goes back to the sustainability conversation that we were having earlier about diversity being at the heart of that, first and foremost. I think a lot of times people used to think sustainability was just having a recycling program, and that's not where that really hails from. So we're making strides there, and I think most of our events now, no, I shouldn't say most, a lot of our events are really implementing programs to make their events, be more diverse. And Mike's Chicago Half Marathon is a prime example of that, of going into an underserved community and embracing them and saying, well, what would you like to see, versus us, only showcasing the most beautiful parts of our cities and not considering what else might be out there to bring in those communities.
Yeah, it brings back to the whole thing we did yesterday on what is the purpose. Was it yesterday? I've lost time. It could be day one. What is the purpose of the event? What is your purpose and what are your objectives? But you've now got a post-pandemic survey out. What is that telling you? What's your finger on the pulse saying? Where are we going? What should we be aware of?
Well, that's a great question. I'd say consumers' wants have changed. They're looking, for more of an experience. They are looking for things throughout the entire race, throughout the entire course. They're looking for what happens after the event. How are you talking to them, leading up to the event? And I think someone said earlier too that, talking about a year-round conversation with those participants. They really are craving that. They want that feeling and sense of community. So I think, leaning into that a little bit more is probably going to be really important for people going forward.
But that's a segment of the runners. There's still the hardcore hardcore runners who are out there looking to improve their best. I think you're talking 18 to 30, that age group. And you have a case study of one you were telling me about? When they had coffee. When we
had actual coffee, I was sharing, I did this very, very scientific case study of one. It was my 21-year-old daughter. And one of the conversations that I've been asked a lot recently, well, the two conversations are, where are our runners? Why aren't they coming back? And number two is, how do we attract the younger generation? And I've heard that here several times already. So I did. I called my daughter one day. Actually, I sent her a text message that said, I have a very important question to ask you. Please call me, because you can't get a hold of a college student by calling them on the phone. You have to first send a text message. And if she doesn't respond to that, then I send her a Snapchat and say, check your text message. And that's how she will get back to me. So she called, and I said, okay, I have a question for you, and it has to do with my job. And she's like, oh, great, we're going to talk about running. So I said, I know you're skewed because, you've been brought up around road races. You've had the privilege of, kind of going and seeing the elite runners in the front. I said, but, I'm always trying to get you to sign up for races with me, and you never want to do it. Like, what gives? What's going on? I said, I want to know what you and your friends are doing. Tell me what you are doing instead of going to road races. And and why you're not going to road races. Like, why wouldn't you go sign up for a super fun 5K? And she was an open book, and she said, well, I'm glad you asked. she said, honestly, she said, I want something, I want instant gratification. I don't want something that I have to train for a long time. She said, for me, I'm more apt to sign up for Orange Theory the night before, give them my $10 deposit, and if I don't show up, they're taking my $10 anyway, so I'm gonna show up. She said, I'm looking for accountability and social activities with my friends. She said, so if my friends want to do it, I'll do it too. And the one most profound thing that I heard her say, and I took this very seriously, was she said, I'm afraid of being last. I'm afraid of being too slow. And there's absolutely zero reason for her to feel that way as an active 21-year-old participant, but it was the perception, because she hears the word road race and it intimidated her. And so I think that's something to think about. I took that back to my team, and we thought about, going forward with our conference this year. We always like to try and have some sort of big reveal. And so we embarked on a new study that is going to be, we're in the market with it right now, for 18 to 30-year-olds. So it's Gen Z and a part of millennials. And a little bit of a nod to Alessio here, because World Athletics is helping us with that endeavor. And we're asking a lot of the questions in there, right down to the vernacular of how we're talking to them and where we are talking to them. I can tell you right now, my daughter and her friends, they're not on Facebook. That 18 to 20 or 30-year-old, they're not there. They're on TikTok and they're on Instagram. And that's where she's making her buying decisions, and that's where she's finding her recipes, quite frankly, on TikTok. But that's how they're making their decisions. So that's, if we want to lean into that market, those are the areas we need to start looking at. I had the opportunity a couple of months ago to talk with, again, trying to find answers that I can share with our membership and our community at large. I had the opportunity to talk with the previous marketing manager at TikTok, and he had no background with running at all. But I explained to him my dilemma, and he distilled it down to one key thing that I thought was really interesting, and it had to do with the sport of pickleball. And I'm a huge fan, if you know me, about leaning into other sports and what we can learn from other sports. And he said, stand back and look at pickleball. You need 4 players.
You're talking pickleball?
Pickleball, it's
called.
Pickleball. That's what it's called in the U.S. I don't know if it's something.
In some places it's called paddle tennis.
Okay. He said, if you and I make a commitment to play pickleball together, there needs to be 4 of us. He said, but if you don't show up to play pickleball with me, I can't play. He said, but if it's different with running being so autonomous, that if you say to me, Norrie, I'm sorry, I was up too late, I can't go do that 5-miler tomorrow, I'm not stopping you from going. You can still go. So there's that accountability to each other. And how the question that I have is, how do we bring that to running?
And it almost contradicts what your daughter was saying about, I want to run with my friends. So, and the commitment is so late. Right. It's a last-minute commitment. Now, to any event organizer, that's a nightmare. Entries on the day, we did that in 70s, 80s, it's fallen away. If you don't commit up front, I can't balance my books.
We can't plan. So how do we figure that out is the bigger question, when we know that behavior has changed. And I don't know that it's ever going back to where people are going to sign up 6 to 10 months in advance for an event. I'm actually seeing it with our annual conference for Running USA. While we've got over 300 people registered, I look at our numbers and I think, gosh, these are the same event directors that are concerned that people aren't signing up in advance for their races. However, they're not signing up in advance for this.
That's it. So it's full of contradictions. So maybe we've got to look at a 18 to 30-year-old special to attract that segment in that you can only sign up in the last 24 hours. Yeah.
Right, and look for the opportunities, and this is the piece of the study that I'm very excited about, is look for the opportunities to partner. When we can put this study out and show where they are going, whether it's Orange Theory or the Pickleball League, whatever those things are, look for those partnership opportunities with those types of other sports and organizations. I know that with Orange Theory specifically, they had done a partnership at one time with Ragnar Relay, where they had a 24-hour relay race on their treadmills inside the Orange Theory gyms. Highly successful. It was done for charity. You know, maybe there's more of an opportunity in those sorts of environments.
Yeah, and then your daughter was saying she wanted a party afterwards. So event organizers now have to plan for a party that they don't know if anyone's going to turn up to until the finish of the race. But
yeah, I don't. And if, when I say party, she's not looking for drinking.
Yeah.
she's looking for a festive environment. For someone at that age, a festive environment can be something as simple as having selfie stations, having a visual wall where they can go and take pictures with a group of what they've just accomplished, and having those things along the course too. I think are really enticing, things that they can engage with the whole way.
And I think, well, as a technical person, I focus on the finish. I want to give the photographers and the media a nice, clean finish. And the most annoying thing is, people coming across the line with, I'm sure it's the same for the photographing industry as well, come across the line and they want to stop with their iPhone and take a selfie. But if you recreate that finish and put it outside, we're able to move people through. So
great opportunity. And one of the things I've heard various times throughout these presentations, the past couple of days is the finishing times are going down, and it's okay. It's okay if not everyone is passionate just about fast times. There's a place for that. But if we want to bring newer folks into the sport, that's not the solution.
We've got to go there.
You've got to go where they are.
And it's interesting. I mean, South Africa is virtually unique in the world that all our events are done under a federation through a club. You can't have an event unless it's through a club, and the club may contract an event organizer, professional event organizer, etc. And what we're finding is we're having to define the contenders as a separate batch, whereas previously, worldwide, it's tended to be there is an elite, but we're focusing on the mass. And so that talks to that. We can't have the same rules for the elite that we have for the mass, or we can't have the same rules for the mass that we have for the elite. And the more we focus on that, the opportunity to grow the mass is much bigger.
I agree, and one final point around this when we talked about the pandemic earlier, and people were forced to get very creative, and it's time to be thinking about how we can be creative with our live events as well, because I think there was a tendency to go right back to our same formula that worked before the pandemic, and it's changed.
And I think, your surveys are key to that. What are the problems that listening to the client is key. What are the problems that you're facing, and are they getting harder to get the data, and how do we get around that?
Absolutely. Anytime you do a survey, it's a lift. It's not an easy task. I think people's time is so valuable. People's attention span is shorter. So when we ask our folks to do these sorts of surveys, there's the one we're in market with right now. We had to be very strategic about 9 minutes. Has to be done in 9 minutes. We're lucky to get 9 minutes of time from 18 to 30-year-olds.
That's double the time to enter a race, huh?
That's true. That's true. And then, for us, we're using our members to disseminate some of our surveys, not the particular one that we're in market with right now. They're actually, because we wanted to talk to non-runners. We wanted to know what would make them want to come run. So we didn't use our membership for the survey we're in market with now, but our regular surveys are through our membership, and those people are already running. They're a captive audience. And so we're getting those, same results. So, it's on us, it's as an organization, it's on Running USA to look for new avenues to be able to reach out to people who aren't already in that active audience.
And why is that getting harder? Why is it the POPI Act and the Information Act? Is that?
Yeah.
Or is it competition? People scared of giving their data into an open space?
I don't think it's necessarily they're scared of giving their open data. I think the data, and we had this conversation with Jackie from Haku. It tends to, my data and Haku's data, race roster, like they're when you look at it, it's pretty similar across the board when you evaluate it. And we are having issues with being able to privacy policies issues and GDPR, and not being able to, kind of have people share the information that they once were okay sharing.
Yeah. I mean, yesterday I think Donna was speaking about the World Marathon Club and the massive, uptake they got in that, in opening that and launching that this year. A global one would help us all, but it would have to be able to be segmented down into regions and countries.
And countries, right.
I'm sure you see it across the states. Some states react one way and other states react other ways to your...
It's true, and a couple of years ago, actually, I don't know if Chris is in the room, but we did, when we were in Singapore, we did a study with Asia. The other piece of this is translations of surveys, and so how we translate and use different words in different countries is challenging. So it's not as simple as just taking one survey and putting it over into another market. Even if you can do the translations, it's what we call things are completely different in general too.
Yeah, it's certainly an exciting future and a big challenge, I think, that we need to throw out to the industry. How do we talk to our clients? What feedback do we get, and what are the opportunities that come out of that?
Sure, because a lot of times, they may ask for things that we just know are not possible, and they're not possible. But I would encourage everyone to reimagine what you are doing a little bit more and think of what is possible.
I think there's a huge opportunity with the likes of Parkrun, which has a global spread, and many of those people don't ever end up in a race. So there needs to be some sort of collaboration. So bringing people together to create a global database. If you took the World Marathon Club and you took the Parkrun database and you were able to merge it. Now that's what, I think you missed it on day one. The talk was all about collaboration and data. That would probably give us the best picture of what the trends are that we as within the sport, either as federation, either as event organizers or suppliers, need to know to plan for that third wave or fourth wave that we're going to have.
Sure, there's getting the database of runners, and then there's also getting the runners to take the actual survey.
Yeah.
Those are two individual challenges.
Yeah. I don't know if anyone out in the audience we've got about 2 minutes left, any questions or any suggestions on two factors. 18 to 30s, how do we bring them in? You've heard what they want. And database, that global database that was being discussed on day one, how do we get it of runners? Any thoughts, any questions?
Hi, thank you for that. I found it incredibly interesting. Just on that demographic 18 to 30, I think you said, something that just sort of popped into my mind that we haven't actually discussed much over the last few days is gamification. So how do we, to your point about going to them, speaking to them their language at their touch points, and it is mostly Snapchat and TikTok. You're right, they're not on Facebook, but how do we incorporate gamification into our events to make them much more attractive, because they're using gamification sort of every day in every aspect of their lives?
That's a wonderful question, and I know a lot of our technology partners with their training apps are offering that, Strava being a prime example. And so, it'd be interesting to have the conversation with someone like Strava, what they're seeing is in that demographic area, and look for those synergies.
Any other questions? Alessio, I saw you. Sorry? Yeah.
Thanks, Christine. I would just like to understand what kind of techniques do you use to keep your member races engaged with you? How do you make sure that they see value in being part of the organization? It's a totally self-interested question here.
No, that's great. We have different levels of membership in our organization, and so once you've sort of come into the ecosystem of Running USA as a member, we make a conscious effort to promote our benefits to you through our newsletters, through social channels, and we have a person on staff who is responsible for member outreach. So we try to make sure that, if we know your event's coming that weekend, we're reaching out and we're saying, good luck, do you need anything? It just depends on, what level you are in, but we are essentially a marketing channel for your event. Some of it does come back on the member to engage with us to say, hey, we have this news that we want to promote, but it's also on us constantly to be looking for new benefits to promote to our members. Obviously, the biggest benefit we hear is people having the ability to come to our Running USA conference with a discount, but we offer different programs such as music licensing, event insurance, working advantage, different things that can help you do your business more efficiently, or cost savings as well.
Christine, thanks very much. I think your alliance has been on the go since 1999, so you've evolved quite. COVID caused a lot of countries to start creating those alliances, and you've shown us where it can go to. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.